Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our HR and Hospitality webinar session hosted by our wonderful partners, caterer.com. For those who don't know me, I'm Esther O'Halloran and I'm Chair of HR and Hospitality, and we're really pleased to see so many of you tuned in this morning. So as some of you will know, we've worked together for many years and built a really strong relationship with caterer.com, and so absolutely delighted to be joining forces with them on this live virtual event to bring you, our HR and Hospitality members, and of course the extensive caterer.com audience, some valuable insights into the topics concerning all of us today. Before we start, to make the most of this session, which is due to last about an hour, I'd love you to add any questions that you may have to the chat box. You can have them throughout, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we possibly can. If some do remain unanswered at the end, promise we will come back to you after this session. And as we go through, remember we love to see you tweeting and sharing, so please use the hashtags, hashtag reflect reopen rise, and tweet at HRINH_UK plus caterer.com. And of course we'll share this session after the recording. We'll share the recording of this session, sorry, and any recommended resources that's related to this content. So that's all done. So 1 year on, you know, we all recognise the impact COVID has had on our sector with huge disruption and losses. However, from every crisis, I think also comes an opportunity, and an opportunity for positive change. Hospitality, you're all gearing up for reopening, you know, employers are getting into the detail of workforce planning, and so now we need to consider how are we going to support our people to not only better manage their lives around their work, but also their work around their lives. The teams and workplaces we as leaders create will drive our successful recovery and growth. But what are the essential points for attention? What do we need to be mindful of? And of course, when it comes to people, processes and cultures, what matters most? We know we'll be dealing with a whole spectrum of feelings and emotions for people coming back to work, from either being, you know, super excited, super cautious. And those feelings will also apply to our guests and customers, not just our teams. So we do need to reflect on the lessons learned from the last year, you know, in order to be ready to reopen, so that we can rise again and be the greatest sector to work in. I'm incredibly proud to be associated with hospitality. And of course, today it's not about me. I'm delighted to be joined by some really inspiring hospitality leaders who'll be sharing with us their reflections and learnings on the lessons of 2020, you know, how those insights are helping them get ready, you know, to reopen their business. The recovery and future growth of their organisations. And I'm really excited and looking forward to hearing from our panellists. We've got Michael Bonsor, whose hotels managed to stay open all this time since September, and they're now rethinking their business. Ghazala David, who's joining us, whose properties were housing NHS staff and frontline workers like last year, you know, hearing from her and how they've had to adapt. And of course, Josh Light, who's preparing teams for all the changes that need to be communicated to ensure people are reconnected with their work. So without further ado, I feel like I should be shouting lights, camera, action. Let's get our panellists to turn on their cameras and introduce themselves properly to our audience. I'm going to start with you, Michael. If you'd like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael. I'm Managing Director here at Rosewood London, and I actually opened the hotel almost 9 years ago. So, yeah, in my head, I feel like I left university just a few years ago, but I've been sort of, in the industry now for like over 2 decades. So, good to see you all.
Yeah, good. And Ghazala?
Hi, I'm Ghazala David. I am the Area Director of Human Resources for Dorsett Hotels. I've been here for a year, and I actually walked in just after or just before the pandemic. So it was quite challenging. So yes, it's been great working through this whole period, through the lockdown, and yeah, as we go on.
Okay, good. Thank you. Josh?
Hi, yeah, I'm Josh Light, Director of People and Culture, working on a new project soon to be announced.
Oh, that sounds exciting and intriguing, Josh. Look forward to speaking and listening to what you all have to say this morning. So I'd like to begin with you, Ghazala. So what stage are you at with your planning for reopening?
So we started looking and putting a roadmap together for what is really needed. And as the government guidelines keep on changing every single day, as we can see from one thing to another, things that we have started planning ahead is to ensure that before all our teams come back, that they are actually fully retrained, they get rebranded. It's that making sure that they are being nurtured into the job, back into the workplace. It is going to be very difficult initially because some may not have worked for almost a year being on furlough. So there is going to be that point where there will be the mental part of it, coming back into a workplace, coming back in, oh, I've forgotten my password for my Opera, or how do I do this, or how do I do that? So is that mindful that we need to be aware of, that we need to bring them in, what needs to be done, and everything. Maybe it looks like it might even be little baby steps bringing them in, but that training has to be really quite robust, and you don't put everybody into the same box because everybody's learning will be different. You may have some that will just fall into it and go, yeah, great, I've been away for a year, I'm excited, I want to come back and everything is going to be wonderful. Actually, it may not be that wonderful because there are going to be different things that you might be doing. We are also putting into place where they have to be very flexible and adaptable. We had experience already when we were housing NHS staff. So during that whole process, the teams that were working, they were very flexible. They had to adapt. They were doing all sorts of different roles. And also bearing in mind, when we have this coming back, the teams that are, we are bringing back gradually, they're also learning new skills, because as they're multitasking, as they're learning different departments and being flexible, they are actually learning what's the next department. I've never worked in housekeeping before, so I'm learning something new, or I've never done HR before, so I'm going to be doing some admin. How do I do that? So we have put a lot of various different processes in place where we are kind of looking at how we're going to bring people back into the workplace, and also talking to the HODs at the same time, because it's also to make sure that the HODs are coached in the right manner. They also understand.
It sounds like, Ghazala, you've had a real opportunity for multi-skilling some of your teams during this time, giving them new skills.
Yes, and it was really exciting because they really embraced it. It wasn't that hands folding, I'm not going to do this, but it really was. They embraced it because they thought, right, I need to do this. And at the same time, because like many of the hotels, we also kept the teams, they were able to stay in-house, so they were not traveling. So that was also a positive side for them, because it was through the pandemic, it was that really difficult time, nobody wanted to travel. So they had that opportunity. If they wanted to go home when they were off, they could do that. But the rest of the time they stayed in, and whilst they were staying in, they took that opportunity also. They would get on to learning different tasks at the same time and supporting each other at the same time.
So a lot of planning, a lot of new tasks that have been learnt, and lessons, obviously, because you've had key workers in your organisation earlier on as well. Michael, if I can just come to you for a moment, you managed to remain open. So you reopened in September and you stayed open during that time. What have been some of the challenges that you faced and that you're now, preparing for and planning for? Oh, Michael, your sound's off.
As you said, we opened a little bit later You think after a year I'd be able to get the mute and unmute situation under control. But so yeah, we waited till September to open last year, and then we've stayed open, as you said. So that, of course, has made us reevaluate the business as well, because obviously only certain clients can travel, certain guests from certain industries can travel. So we've had to kind of reevaluate how we talk to those clients, who those clients are, where those contacts are, in order to have the most share of the business as we can. So not that we've been hitting our usual 85% occupancy, but instead of being in sort of single digits, we've managed, occasionally to get into double digits and do many other pieces of business as well. From September until today, and even today we're booking in groups that can travel. So it's really made us stop and reevaluate the whole business. And I think that's, for many businesses, that has been one of the few upsides of this situation, is that we had that moment when we had to be locked down. And we were lucky. We had incredibly supportive owners to enable to have sort of anywhere from 40 to 60 people continuing to work in the business, and they've been busy. They've been reevaluating their departments. So whether it's in HR, bringing all of our training online, and all of those projects you try and get to when you're operating normally, but never can, because 85% occupancy sort of gets in the way. Or whether it's the sales team or the events team, cleaning up databases, or it's the finance team stripping out all the expenses, renegotiating all the contracts, all of that, all of those things we've managed to actually get on top of and get sort of tied away. So I really feel now, as we approach the proper reopening, sort of from May 17th onwards, that the business has never been in the best shape. It's in the best shape to accept the business back.
Yeah.
The really encouraging thing we've seen is that from the minute that al fresco dining was announced, we literally have seen thousands of reservations come in for outdoor dining. In fact, in the first 5 days, we have over 1,500 reservations. And we're blessed with that beautiful outdoor courtyard space.
Yeah.
We're literally removing car parking spaces and creating dining. But why not? And you know what?
You have to be resourceful.
And next summer, we might do the same, regardless of the situation we're in, because why not? So we're doing things already that we never thought we would do. And I think a lot of the things we're doing, such as delivery and our online store, they're all going to stay.
Yeah. And I suppose it is, when you take some of it's almost like you're reopening as a brand new property. And that must be the same for the rest of you as well, that you've had this chance to really plan ahead and get things ready, clear some of the projects that maybe I'll get round to, but now you've got round to doing that, and looked at your space in a different way. As you said, do you need car parking spaces, when you can have al fresco dining? So
Exactly.
And
managed to clean the office up as well, which has never happened. But back to your point about just how associates are feeling, there is the spectrum of how they're feeling, and you have to acknowledge that. You also have to acknowledge the people that have been working full hours really for the past year, and who are actually quite tired and are looking forward to a holiday. And then you obviously have people who haven't been in the business really at all. So you really have, this vast array of feelings and attitudes. And it's going to be up to us to really identify the individual's feelings and work with them to get everyone sort of, back on track.
Yeah, and I think, Ghazala, you touched on that briefly as well, in terms of this whole piece around people's well-being, mental well-being, and being in the right frame of mind when it comes back to the workplace. Josh, what about you? What have been sort of, the key learnings for you from the experience of, you've worked in some fabulous brands, and your experience in the last year of managing your brands and your workforce. What have been the key learnings for you?
Yeah, totally. So I guess to talk a little bit more broadly rather than specifically about any business, I think one of the key things that I've found from both my network and from personal experience is kind of over communicating. So people don't know what's happening, people don't know what's going on, people want different levels of information. So kind of over communicating is often better than feeling that there isn't enough information coming out, and doing that in a way that feels kind of compassionate, kind of frank and human is generally my go-to. So be clear and be confident about it, but actually remember that people are feeling really differently to both Michael and Ghazala's points around people aren't the same. People are going through different things, and you have to remember, people have lost loved ones. People, it's still COVID is still very much around, and we can't forget that. So yes, it's really exciting that we can reopen, but people have been through really tough things over the past year financially, as well as kind of wider personal challenges. So I think empathetic leadership has probably never been so important. People also communicate in different ways. If I think about the millennials, if their phone rings, they have an allergic reaction, but they're on WhatsApp or Instagram 24/7. So it's around using tech to be able to reach out to people and make it kind of a safe space. I definitely think flexibility is the approach. I think we're all kind of a little sick of the Zoom era of pub quizzes and various other things, and appreciating that not everybody wants to do those things. But some people still do, right? So it's that balance. Just because it's not for everyone doesn't mean that it's not for some. And again, I think there's something around giving people tools to be able to manage stress, or at least being able to put their kind of head above the parapet and say, actually, I'm struggling a little bit. And whether that's, one of the tools that I've seen over the last kind of couple of years is a tool called Open Blend, which measures stress at work, confidence, and happiness through a very quick kind of pulse check, which gives managers an indication of, and you don't have to go into a deep dive kind of mental health first aid conversation or a coaching conversation. It's just people to say, do you know what, actually I'm struggling a bit, and that's okay. Of course, there's things like EAPs and stuff too, but
and I suppose, continuing with some of the points that you just raised there, Josh, what advice would you give to our audience in terms of, that they should be really mindful of and apply, in terms of getting ready for reopening? What sort of advice do you think would be useful?
Yeah, I guess, we're all under pressure from owners to get the doors open and start making some revenue, right? And rightly so. And I think some people are absolutely chomping at the bit to get back in and get on with it. And equally, there are some people that aren't. And there are some people that think they are until they get back in and suddenly go, wow, I've not done this for a long time. Even fitness levels, people are used to, front of house gang that are used to being on their feet 24/7, suddenly have been on their backsides for quite a long time and sitting at home, so just stamina alone is going to be something to be aware of, and giving people kind of that time to be able to ease themselves back into it. I think definitely that thing I said around kind of empathy, remembering that people are different and that people want to be able to open up and have conversations at different times, and being able to do that, whether it's via Workplace or Yapster or one of those kind of tech elements, so they don't actually have to say something out loud. They can do it kind of through a message, or just simply kind of pulse checks. But don't forget that whilst yes, we're desperate to get the business open, and having long lengths of pre-opening training time to be able to get people ready just isn't a reality for many businesses, because money's already tight. Is thinking about how can you start that process early. So I don't know whether Flow as an LMS system, there are many others out there that people use, is whilst people are on furlough, the government guidelines is that people can complete training. So I think there's something in there around being able to push material through to start to get people prepared. And at this point, I'm not talking about menus or service standards. I'm talking about preparing them emotionally and mentally. So whether that's things like, the format model, or the empathetic leadership model, thinking around kind of how do you get self-awareness, emotional intelligence, all that kind of stuff. How do you get people to mentally prepare themselves before we even start talking about kind of policies and procedures and SOPs and COVID guidelines, which is all just a little bit kind of scary, to be honest, at this stage.
Yeah, and I think 17th of May is the date that we all have in mind. It's what stage do we start mentally prepare and physically preparing people to come back into work? So Michael, just a point, because you've remained open, but you haven't had all your staff in during this time, have you? So are you doing anything differently with the staff that have been on furlough or not been in work?
Yeah, I think, when we realized that this wasn't just going to be 4 or 6 weeks, and, it was going to be obviously more than a year, we noticed that after this, in the lockdown we're currently in, so we really noticed in January there was a dip. I personally noticed it as well. I think in how we all felt. I think we didn't really see that lockdown coming. And the change around Christmas and New Year, people's plans were all of a sudden changed. A lot of our team then couldn't travel and see family. Then January, the weather doesn't help, and there was a real moment there where we realized that we needed to really up engagement with people and communication. And Josh said, let's over communicate, and that's what it's all been about, over communicating. And we sort of brought back a lot of social activities in January and February just to re-engage people and get people's spirits up. And we've done thousands of hours as well of online training. And all of our management team have completed almost 80% of their online training that they would normally do out through the course of the year. So we've managed to get all of that sort of almost done. And we will do before May. So that people can just concentrate on the operation, because I think there's going to be some tough times ahead of us, right? There's going to be those moments, those peaks of business, but it's a one-off peak, and actually you need 5 or 6 peaks in order to bring more staff back. And we want to get back. Like, all of our efforts right now in sales and marketing is to get the business back on its feet as much as possible and bring back some of the colleagues that we've also lost. We've all lost some colleagues, and I want to get them back as well. So yeah, we've been sort of shifting that social to then virtual online training, using Flow, using the Skills Network. We have the most amazing mental health awareness course on there, which is really in depth. I think it's like 14 or 15 modules. And so many people signed up to that. Which was really encouraging to see. And then I think the other thing that we realized was we needed to really re-look at the entire workforce. So we've actually combined a lot of departments together. And so in our food and beverage, the teams no longer are attached to an individual outlet. They can work all throughout the business, because we're going to need that flexibility and agility when we come back. And you know what we've all realized? People can work from home. We never realized this in the hotel industry. We never thought that people could actually do some jobs from home. So that's got us rethinking about how certain departments, the waiter working from home doesn't really work, but there are many departments in the hotel that can have a hybrid working arrangement. And why not?
Yeah, and I think that's, yeah, that is one of those things that we are constantly looking at. Flexible working. Well, you can't work from home if you work in the hospitality sector,
Right.
but actually, as you just said, it has opened up, you know, lots of opportunities when we're looking at workforce planning. I'll come back to some of those points as well in a moment, Michael. But Ghazala, as a business for you know your lovely properties, and also as a leader, what will you be focusing on to ensure, you know, that the future success of Dorsett?
So we, a little bit like what Michael has been saying, our sales teams are out there looking for different business now, because the business isn't what it used to be. It is not going to be our corporate, it's not leisure anymore. So it's more of your domestic leisure that's going to come in. So that's what they're starting to look into. So the more business that comes in, the more, you know, we can bring our associates back. But for us, our associates is something that just tapping in some of the things that Josh and Michael has already said as well. Whilst people are coming back from furlough, we also need to be mindful of when they come back of their mental health, which is something that we've all touched on. And something that has been very close to myself, because I've had to deal with it here within our hotels, is to ensure that there is an employee assistance program somewhere that your organizations would have, and really give them that opportunity to go and talk to them, but in the same breath make sure that you yourself are also there available for them, because sometimes an associate feels a little bit reluctant to go and talk to a stranger. So be there for them at the same time, because that's something that they will absolutely need, and something that they would be looking for, a familiar face that they can actually talk to. So have that open door policy for them at the same time as well. But in terms of looking forward to what is it that we are looking as a leader, what else are we going to do for our associates, is it's important to start building them up as they come in, to start looking at their career path as well, because they have been out of the business for such a long time. And something, again, Josh touched on, if you're somebody who's standing all day long on your feet and coming back in, how are we going to bring them back and sort of baby steps again, coach them through, give them the time to get back into that routine of standing still and having to do all the things that they want to do. But importantly, that we need to support them to make sure that me supports my business here as well as the city, and to ensure that I am there for them in terms of whatever their needs may be, and in terms of directing them, in terms of, you know, there are things sometimes we forget that we need to be engaged with them a lot more than we have been previously. And I like the fact that Michael said, once upon a time, we never thought flexibility is something that hospitality will ever walk into, but it is a key now. So we never thought anybody could work from home, and now it is it. And I think we should also be mindful of that flexibility from working from home, and we should be able to support them. And it's something that I would recommend, that I would support my teams if they are able to work from home, then need to make sure that we do that as well. But in the same breath, don't isolate them completely because they're working from home. If you're doing things within the hotel, or if you make sure you involve them, so they're not left completely out saying, okay, I'm at home, I'm all right, Jack, I don't need to do any more. But they need to be part and parcel of what we are doing and what we do within our teams in the hotels.
And I think it is, you know, when you are that whole being open to the flexible working approach, and, you know, just coming back, because you were talking about that as well, Michael, when you're approaching workforce planning and looking at, you know, what are your future needs, where do you need people, what type of people do you need, and that flexibility point, how different is your workforce planning now to what you were doing pre-pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, we've just recently sent out a survey actually to everyone, because we quickly realized that actually discussing it amongst ourselves who are working sort of full time right now to try and understand what everyone else is feeling is not really correct. We actually need to ask them. So we just did an anonymous survey last week, and we had about a 90% response rate. The vast majority are super excited to come back. There was a lot of valid points on there. Really appreciated a lot of the communication and a lot of the preparations that have gone into place. But you know, there were things that we hadn't thought of, and we need to sort of work on and look at how we bring people back. A lot of that is about sharing just everything, sharing more that what we're doing, what are the operational hours going to look like, what things do we have planned coming up. But you know, in a lot of situations we don't actually have the answer, right? Because we're still waiting for the government as well. And that's okay, like that we don't have the answer. But you know what? We need to tell people that we also don't have the answer, and that it's going to be another 2 weeks before we know that, or another 4 weeks before we know that. And just being really transparent and honest and open, and not trying to, you know, sort of create any cloudiness on sort of decisions. So there's a few learning points for sure, but for the vast, I mean, thankfully, everyone, you know, seems pretty much excited to come back and just get started again, especially the food and beverage teams, because you know, they saw the success of food and beverage back last September, October, and December. And you know, it was so sad in December when, you know, everyone in food and beverage was sort of cut short in one of the busiest weeks that we had in sort of a year. So, and then what we've also realized is that, you know, a number of associates in sales, events, rooms will have to probably do hours and work in food and beverage. So it's now identifying who those people are, who can assist us in other areas of the business that we know are going to be busy. I mean, I don't know if anyone, you know, I'm sure some people on this call have seen the recent STR report. I mean, they're saying that London's only going to have 15–20% occupancy over the summer months, which of course, all of us that normally sit at 90% are finding. But it's probably a harsh reality that, you know, again, we need to come to terms with. So it means a lot of our teams are going to be in other areas of the hotel that they're not comfortable with. So what are we going to do to prepare them in advance?
Yeah, and I suppose it is that planning stage that's really important. That, you know, you look at the workforce, you've got the skills and talent they have, where are they best suited. You also have to factor in, if they haven't been working, that it's going to take them a little time to get back up to pace. So if you've got lots of customers, you know, booked in, obviously with social distancing, you are going to be limited to a certain extent, but you do have to, you know, managers will need to allow them to get back up to pace. As you said, Josh, you know, I've got pandemic bottom, you know, because I've sat on my bottom, I think, for the last year. And so, you know, we need to be aware of that and mindful of that when we're getting our workforce.
Day one of al fresco dining isn't going to be 10 covers for lunch. It's going to be a full house. So,
so plan ahead. Josh, just in terms of, I'm interested in your views on the future of talent in our sector. You know, we have hospitality, we know has been hard hit, but there's been, you know, sadly closures, job losses. You know, we've lost people to other sectors in terms of that. But what are your views of the future of talent in our sector, and, you know, I suppose the job market?
Totally. I think it's going to be tough, you know. It's not going to be easy. There are good people that have found other industries and fallen in love with those industries. I think also because people that work in hospitality are, you know, inherently people that they've gone to retail and they're doing really bloody well at it, and they're now being kind of promoted through the ranks very quickly. I've seen that on a few occasions, and I'm sure we've all kind of seen the various stories that come out around the guy that went to Sainsbury's and is now kind of customer experience director for them, because naturally we're good at that stuff, right? So I think that's one thing. I think we also have to remember that it's people, I hear people all the time talking, oh God, we're so lucky around furlough. And yeah, okay, we are, because it means people have got some money in their accounts every month, and hopefully enough to be able to literally get by. But it's now down to us as kind of business leaders to help those people to fall back in love with our industry and to fall back in love with us and our businesses, right? let's not forget that these people have kind of literally been living on a breadline for months and months and months now, and they are keen to come back, a lot of them, which is amazing. But equally, as we say, you know, that they're going to be exhausted. So it's planning and being strict that we don't end up with a whole load of burnout, because we've said people are desperate to come back and work all the hours because they need the money, but equally putting their health at risk as a result of that. So I think there's kind of a bit of a balance. I think there are some great people out there. You know, let's not mention kind of the big B word, which is obviously coming pretty quickly as well. So you know, there are lots of things that are going to get in the way potentially. It is what it is. I think the only thing that we can do is, as I said, kind of be compassionate, share great stories, be there for people, and you know, panel talks like this are a great example to try and help people to kind of reconnect and re-engage with our industry. And it's down to each of us to kind of almost, we need to club together now, and there's a lot of competitiveness, particularly kind of, Michael, in the 5-star world, for sure. So how do we now club together and say, actually, we are a great place to work, we are a great environment, and really help each other to promote the industry and careers. I mean, the government are doing some great things around apprenticeships and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it's up to every business to now go back out and kind of bang the drum for our industry and remember and help people to kind of fall back in love with us.
Yeah, and I suppose it's holding on to the talent that you've got, and where, you know, that there is more talent out there. What are we doing to bring them into our organisations?
Yeah, I had a story last week, sorry Esther, someone posted a reception role for front of house and had over 900 applications.
Yeah, so it just shows that people do still want to work in our sector, but that creates a very wide candidate pool, I suppose, really, that you can draw on. Are any of you seeing, you know, have new jobs created in your hotels or businesses, or new roles as a result of this pandemic? You know, we've had to work differently and adapt it in many things, or people are doing hybrid roles, that sort of thing. Have you seen much creation of new roles in the sector?
I'm hearing that, definitely. I think Michael kind of related to it earlier on around cross-training everybody to be able to do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the emphasis now is on security, health, and safety. I mean, every second thing I sort of comes across my desk involves security or health and safety in some way. So I think that is definitely something, you know, we're looking, well, we already have put in place, but we're looking to also strengthen just moving forward in that area. Yes, and to the flexibility of teams as well. Yeah, I think we're going to be in a position, I think we're all going to end up in a position all at the same time looking for, you know, more people to hire. And I think there's going to be a really critical point in London, sort of around September or so, October time, I hope, you know, that is the roadmap, where we're going to be hiring a great deal of people. And the market's going to be, I mean, it's great to hear Josh saying there was 900 applicants for that role, but I think there's going to be a real issue into the third, fourth quarter with finding enough people, because so many of the people that we know have returned back to their home countries, and I'm not sure there's enough people left in Britain interested enough in hospitality to fill those roles. And I think we're going to have to do a lot of work between now and then to rebuild, you know, the reputation of the industry and the industry, and you know, that's going to have to be a focal point for a lot of us to get out there on the road and talk about the great things in the industry. But I think what also the COVID has done I think to the general public has shown how much they appreciate and miss hospitality, and how much isn't it wonderful to actually go to the pub on a Sunday afternoon with friends, and how special that moment is now, and how much we're missing. So hopefully that's going to create, you know, more interest in the industry as well.
Yeah, and I think you know, we need to be realistic about what business levels are going to be looking like, you know, as we go through the rest of 2021. Ghazala, what are you anticipating your business levels will look like for the remainder of this year? What sort of planning and thoughts are going through with your teams?
I think it's something, again, just coming back with now the Europe going into the red zone doesn't help our situation at all. So that's another thing that we need to start thinking about, and what it's going to be like. We've kind of started looking at strategies from what it looked like in 2019. We're never going to get that back for another 2 years or so. I can't see that happening. And so it's rethinking, well, what is that going to look like in 2021, and what's that going to look like at 2022? And I believe that, you know, all the hotels are going to probably be chasing after the same market. So there's going to be a lot of competitiveness out there of getting that clientele into your hotels. And at the same time, the business that comes in is a same impact on your associates, because they too will have to adapt at the clientele that comes in. So where you have a corporate client that comes in, they're probably, you know, their service levels or their expectation is very different, you know, and then you have a leisure person, and they would be completely different. And now when the market's totally changed, their expectation might be 10 times more than they've actually done before. So your associate needs to adapt in line with what your clientele is adapting as well. So there is that part that we have to also look into at the same time. So right now, I would pretty much say that we are all in the same bag in terms of where our business will sit. Shepherd's Bush, you know, we have been in some ways slightly. Right now, our hotel is closed, so there's a smaller team that we are here working. But you know, we have had previously, when we did have NHS, and after that, and some of the business that we probably will continue to tap will probably from local presentations. We've got local studios, etc. So probably some business will come through that. But again, how much of it is going to come through? And Zoom is becoming such a big thing. People seem to be using Zoom meetings for everything. So they're not bringing people into the you know, workplace, whether there's going to be travel from local either. And our city business, the Dorset City, is equally, you know, suffering, because they're corporate. They're mainly corporate. The business in the city is very corporate. So I think we pretty much are in a very challenging times right now. But I would believe that something Michael said, come September, hopefully things will change. People will get vaccinated, and you know, business will start booming. What that looks like, you know, only time will tell.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, the vaccination program, we've got that clearer roadmap, said that, you know, it has lifted people's moods and spirits, you know, but we need to be prepared for, as you said, Michael, some peaks and troughs, you know, over the coming months. You've mentioned, Ghazala, and I know you did as well, Michael, the whole, you know, training, that we've used a lot of this time for making sure that all of our teams are fully trained. Digital platforms, Zoom meetings, you know, have become the norm in terms of that. What role do you think digital platforms, in, you know, in terms of training, will take going forward? Will we go back to the old sort of, you know, classroom-based learning, face-to-face interviews, or do you think, you know, this digital world that we're now in and have moved in very rapidly is here to stay? What's your thoughts, Michael?
I mean, you know, in the hospitality industry, we've always sort of lagged behind other industries when it comes to digitalization. So I hope it stays, and it will stay. And our workforce is quite young, so they actually really appreciate that they can access it on their phone at home, traveling, commuting in. You know, they can get work done. So they actually really appreciate this shift. So we really want to keep it that way and move a lot of other, you know, training videos and other bits and pieces in the business onto online as well. Of course, briefings and so forth will need to happen kind of in person in the operational areas, But I'm hoping we just have less paper on the desk. We have less handouts. We have less, for sustainability reasons. I hope, that's all going to help our pledges in that area as well, then we've got to look at, when are those moments that we sort of come together and be in the same room, and what does that look like? But I'm not sure that's going to be for training anytime soon, at least not for sort of this year moving forward. Yeah, but I would just go back to another point there as well. I think what's happening now with sort of vaccination and testing is that our media has changed as well. So how we're being viewed now internationally has changed. So, we're seeing a lot of interest now in from our American clients, and we're getting sort of indications from America now that there might be travel corridors from sort of mid-May onwards. And it's just incredible to think that we might see an American client before we see a French client. But I do feel now, and we're hearing it from our associates as well, they're feeling more positive now too, because our international PR of the country is now changing.
Yeah, and I think that's, that could only be good news for our sector in terms of that. Josh, I know, learning and development and the whole training piece is an absolute passion of yours. And, as I said, we've seen digital training really come to the forefront in there. But what else are you considering in terms of using digital platforms for maybe, I don't know, recruitment or onboarding? What role do you think that has to play when we're getting ready for reopening and beyond?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm a massive believer in trying to get as many kind of systems as possible to take away the admin so that we can spend more time being with our people, and that's never been kind of more important, I don't think. So, fully integrated systems, ATS, LMS, comms, kind of all talking to your HRS system, whatever that might be. And that it's not expensive anymore. There are so many kind of new businesses out there where previously you used to think, oh, that's going to cost, 50, 60 grand. Actually, you can do it within 10 now, if you pick the right businesses. I think for me, anything that takes away the need for admin so that I can spend more time with the teams is fundamental. It's really interesting. I've spoken to a couple of people over the last kind of few weeks and months who have said they're now integrating kind of happiness officers, or we're kind of within the people teams, and call it what you want. It's a bit of a wanky term potentially, excuse my French. But it's that person's sole responsibility is to go around and make sure that people are happy, they're engaged, that problems are being dealt with, that their mental health is good. I'd much rather invest in a role like that than I would have somebody kind of processing paper. To Michael's point, we're trying to be as sustainable as possible. I think we've all got to focus on that and our responsibility. I think blended learning is definitely still important. I think digital is great, but not everyone gets on board with that. And I think it's about having a balance, and whether that's a live session through something like Zoom, or whether that's videos. You can Flow as an example. You can do workbooks now, so you can have people sitting in a session filling out their workbook on their phone or a tablet or a laptop or whatever it might be, and then everything is there stored in one place for them to go back to. And then I think the biggest thing is about training managers or finding systems that enable managers. And I'm going to say Open Blend again because it's been such a great tool, and I'm hearing great things about it, and have used it myself, around giving managers the ability and the process to be able to have conversations with employees that potentially they may not be skilled or comfortable to do naturally. So what sort of questions should they be asking, and knowing that it's okay for someone to say, I feel like this, and being able to go, do you know what, I don't know how to help you with that, but thank you for telling me, and let me put you in touch with someone that can. And remembering that people haven't, it would be unfair for us to make the assumption that people are going to come back and remember the menus and the service styles, the table numbers. They're not. They're absolutely not. And it's going to take a long time for that information to go back in. It's not going to be like it was. And that, again, that's kind of where I go back to start now, you know, start now, even if you're not planning to open until kind of May or later, if you haven't got kind of outside space. Start now, start running sessions, and do it in a way that's fun and enables people to be able to connect with each other again. Because you know, again, we can't underestimate that peer-to-peer learning where a lot of that happens, and they're not having that opportunity at the moment because everything's being done digitally. So give people the space to be able to have conversations around whatever that might be. And what I found is that if you run Zoom sessions with a really clear agenda or a really clear kind of frame, actually you tend to get more people engaged with that rather than just hi, let's have a coffee and a catch up, because people don't know what to do in that environment. So if you go in with today we're going to talk about this and I'd love to hear your opinions on X, Y, or Z, which means a little bit of more work kind of up front, people tend to engage with that because they know what to expect.
Yeah, no, some great insights. So before I look at any questions from the audience, just a quick round the room, or round the screen in this case, just a short top tip from each of you based on your reflections of last year, you know, your current focus on rebuilding your business. A little nugget to share with our audience. Michael, a top tip from you maybe?
What I would say is, I think no. I think the answer no can't just be an answer anymore. And actually, we need to sort of stop and think, like, how can we do that? Whether it's requests from our associates or whether it's requests from our clients, we actually now need to be thinking way outside the box and say, you know what, how can we make that work? And I think that's going to be a good mantra moving forward for the rest of this year. How do we make that work?
Yeah, I like that. That's a positive thing as well. Not we can't do it. How can we make that work? So yeah, that's great. Ghazala, top tip from you?
Again, you know, there is never to say can't do it, don't know how to do it, never heard it how to do it, but it is a can-do attitude. And really thinking out of their box, and more importantly, for me it is when they do come back, is to really engage with them and really embrace them when they're coming back, to make them feel, you know, you have been part of this team and we are excited to have you back, and we're excited that you're back in your workplace. So for me, it's that exciting part that the passion that you have, you need to ooze it over to your teams when they come back and really remain engaged.
Yeah, and I think that passion and enthusiasm, it's contagious, isn't it? You
It
know, you go
is.
with a big smile on your face, everyone smiles back at you. So yeah, it's being ready to embrace our teams. It'd be great when we can embrace them. Josh, a tip from you?
Yeah, I think, you know, leaders of businesses have often been in a position just like Michael and Ghazala, where they've been working all the way through. So they're a bit knackered, they're a bit exhausted, and getting the operation open is going to be front and center. But let's remember that, you know, compassionate leadership goes a really long way, and to over communicate and to do that with confidence.
Yeah, no, indeed. Thank you. So we've had Charlie in the background from caterer.com, who I think has been responsible for collating all the questions, because I certainly haven't done that. Charlie, what questions have we had?
Yep, we've been getting questions in, and I'm going to start with this one. So, what do you feel are the top actions employees want to see from employers as they return?
Oh, that's a good question. Who wants to answer that? Josh?
I'll kick off. I mean, I think first and foremost is safety. You know, let's get that off the table very quickly and not be a concern, because we've got the right processes and things in place. So whether that's temperature checking, whether that's lateral flow checking, and to get whatever your process or your policy is out very quickly, so that people can just put that thought aside and know that it's safe and it's secure. That would be my number one to do right now, because that, you know, as much as people are excited, that people are nervous and scared, and sometimes it's not until you leave the front door on that first day and go, oh my gosh, I've got to go on a tube or train for the first time, that suddenly that kind of comes front and center.
Yeah, no, good. Any other tips from Michael or Ghazala?
Yeah, I would think that, you know, the associates are looking at the business right now, and we've had, you know, comments back from associates on what we're doing on social media. You know, we just partnered up this week. It was announced this week that we'll be hosting the Elton John Oscars virtual party pre-Oscars. So, you know, and I had about 10 comments this morning from associates saying, "Oh, that's amazing! Like even now, whilst we're still in lockdown, before May 17th, like you're announcing something like that, isn't that great?" And so I think, you know, they want to see that the business is supporting them at getting them back up on their feet as quickly as possible as well. And yes, to Josh's point, I mean, the reassurance as well that it's a safe environment. You know, we've introduced testing on site now for all of our associates, so everyone will be expected to be tested twice a week during their working week. And you know, a lot of people have commented already that that's just reassuring to them that those who they're working with, you know, have negative results. So all these little reassurances, and then advanced communication, you know, just so you can minimize all of those surprises when people are returning to day one, I think is really important as well.
Yeah,
I think again, very similarly, I think this health and safety will be one of the key things when they do come back, and especially for those who have been out for a year. They might be apprehensive jumping on a bus or a train to come in, and then coming into the workplace, they need that reassurance that once they walk in, everything is safe, everything is well. But also when they do come in, please, whatever we do, not to just tell them, right, here is your uniform and off you go, and now you're going to go into your workplace. What I believe would be lovely to do is get the teams together. If they're in a morning session, get a little coffee session together with them, and have a small town hall meeting, and then just sort of gradually just bring them in to say, right, this is what you're going to be doing, this is what it is, this is what your role is now changed into. So, you know, there is that easing part of it, phase them in, but not just they come in, they clock in, and off you go, you're on to your job. So I really believe that it would be one of the things that I would want to do for my teams.
Esther, on that note, just in case it's useful for people that are listening, the government are offering free lateral flow testing if they register on the government website before the end of the month. So we don't have long left, but it means that those businesses that are smaller might be able to kind of get access to testing.
Really good point. I can see, Charlie, I can actually see one of the questions, surprisingly, without my glasses. And there's a general question there. What is your greatest hope for hospitality as a sector in the next 6 to 12 months? That's an interesting question. You know, we've got to be forward looking.
That it's still here and thriving?
Yes.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just want to back up as quickly as possible. So, I mean, I'm realistic that it's not going to happen at the end of this year, but I really hope it's not 23, 24 that some people are predicting. That somewhere in 22, it all sort of comes back together quicker than we think. And we're already seeing it. I mean, we're already seeing future groups and large pieces of business booking in for next year. I mean, there's a lot of things that should have happened over the past year that just didn't.
Absolutely.
It happened pretty quickly. So there's a lot of confidence for next year. And it kind of could be a bumper year. I mean, I hope it is.
Yeah, I think so as well, because, you know, we are, or have always been, a very large employer as a sector. Hospitality, I think, is second or third largest, you know, sector for employing people. So, you know, and I know there's been huge changes. So it'd be great to have it back, you know, back where it was. Charlie, have we got time for one more question?
Yeah, let's finish with this one. What has been the single most important lesson from 2020? Let's see if we can get it in one sentence. They've challenged us.
Come on. Ghazala, start with you.
Oh gosh, I would say to reassuring my teams that it was safe to be in your workplace.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of apprehensiveness. That would be it. For me, it was reassuring them it was safe. We had put all the guidelines in, and that's what I would say.
Yeah, good. Josh, in a sentence, the most important lesson? See, Michael's now thinking.
That the world is fragile and human connection is front and center for most people.
Yeah, I like that connection. So great. Michael?
Well, I feel that my patience has been tested, so I feel like I'm a much more patient person now, and flexibility and agility.
Yeah. And I think we have been very, very agile and very flexible in terms of that. So, I'd like to just say thank you to my wonderful panelists and guests for what's been a really insightful session. You know, lots of positive and some practical and actionable insights, I think, which, you know, being valuable as we're getting ready for, you know, April and May in terms of opening. Thank you to the audience who tuned in to listen. Hope you've enjoyed this session and taken away, you know, some practical actions and solutions that you can apply and start thinking about. If we haven't answered your questions today, then we will make sure that that will be followed up offline, so, you know, and help get the answers that you need. So on behalf of the team at caterer.com, who are, you know, behind the scenes and have helped make all of this happen, and, you know, on behalf of HR and hospitality as well, you know, hope to see you at future events that we collaborate with. We love collaborating with our partners. So do keep an eye out for announcements from caterer.com, you know, their social channels, plus HR and hospitality. If you're not already a member, then, you know, do take a look at our site. We are an association for HR professionals. You know, lots of benefits of joining our fantastic community. So it just takes me to say, Michael, Ghazala and Josh, you know, have a great afternoon. The sun is shining, well, it certainly is in South London, and hope to see all of you again soon. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone for listening and taking part. Thank you.